Okay, looks like we're running. Okay, we are recording. And by the way, the videos are still getting lots of visitors. So far, this is what, the fifth class we've had? Sixth or seventh. And every single one of these videos have gone over 200 views. So it's out there somewhere. I don't know who's clicking on it, but somebody's clicking on it, and hopefully it is electronically planting a seed. And that's my prayer. So anyway, remember last week, just real quick, let me back up here. Last week we did this WCP and APP. Yeah, and we talked about the Western Christian Paideia and the American Progressive Paideia, and how the Western Christian Paideia basically started forming around the 700s. By the 1600s, became very almost worldwide in the Western culture. America was founded basically on the principles of the Western Christian Paideia in the 1700s. It held itself very well right up until the 1900s. In the 1900s, started the growth of the Progressive Paideia, which was an attempt to use the education system to get Christ and God out and collectivism in, the progressivism in. And we've been under that now for probably 50 or 60 years. About the same time I've been around. It started in the 40s and 50s, and by now they're basically the first and second generation under the APP are now in the positions of power in government and business and so forth, so that they're calling the shots. And as soon as they started calling the shots, something else happened, COVID. So the combination of them deciding to pull God out and put progressive in, and COVID, all of a sudden, the WC people like myself woke up and said, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? So it kind of snuck in over 50 years, but now they're starting to wake up. And now we're starting to see the conflict uh, here in the States. So the WCP we now seem to be hovering around 66, 67, 68% of Americans call themselves Christian, and emphasize the word call, because the overall definition of Christianity and ours, the way we would define it, there's some big gaps in there. For the most part, probably the biggest gap is the folks that call themselves Christian in the majority are more likely what I call cafeteria Christians. Like folks who go down the food line and say, "I'll help, give me a helping of that, and don't put any of that on my plate." And they do that same thing with the Bible. So they'll selectively read the Bible and pluck pieces out of the Bible that they want to see and that supports their worldview. It went fairly quickly from like 80% down to 60%, low 60s, and it's been holding there now for almost 4 years, coming 5 years, for the last Pew study. So maybe I'm hoping it's bottomed out, but we still have a lot of work ahead of us. We've got to get involved, take back our children's education. Remember the 16,000 hours? That's the amount of time that they have with your kids, and they've been using it. We've got to enculture the love the good and hate the evil, and encourage Christian schools. In fact, glad to see you just walked in. I printed this out for Olga. A Brazilian court has sentenced a couple to 50 days in prison for intellectual neglect after they homeschooled their two daughters without a state-approved curriculum. A Sao Paulo criminal court ruled against Odato and Aida Dinardi, alleging that they had failed to include programs on gender and sex education and tolerance and diversity in the curriculum for their daughters, aged 15 and 11. According to the legal group, the court also ruled that the parents failed to properly integrate their children into Brazilian culture, citing the girls' preference for religious and classical music over popular music. That's Brazil, and we're headed that way. So we need to we need to keep a heads up. We're certainly not out of the woods, but we certainly have some work to do ahead of us. All right, let me jump forward.
Jump forward in that vein, could you expound on what you mean that point about education, how we should return to classical Christian education?
Yeah, okay, good. All right, so the encouraged CCE schools, just within the last 10 or 12 years, an awful lot of, many of the Christian schools have come out of the closet and started saying, hey, we want some money too. Up until about 15 years ago, Christian schools couldn't get a dime. I mean, everything went to the public schools. And so now a lot of the Christian schools, a lot of the Christian schools in the states that have allowed it are beginning to apply for participation, aid, money, things to help them out. Uh, what I'm saying by this is that we now have court cases. Most of them are at the state level, but we have court cases that support the idea of going legally after some state support and bringing the level of Christian schools up to the level of public schools in terms of what assistance they're getting. And what I'm suggesting is that we should encourage these schools. For example, my one of my great grandkids goes to the school up in Atoka. I can't remember, but it's basically a Christian school, and he went there and he loves it. It's great. He was there 3 semesters and he was baptized because everybody around him was Christian, and it wasn't like they were hammering on him. It was just the way life was up there. And so, but unfortunately, that's also like $1,000 a month for those schools. So you can understand why a lot of people can't afford to send them up. So as the Christian schools get more into if we ever get this, what do they call that? Where the choice was it school choice, where you can choose to have your kids take the money that's in the government's got and bring it to the school you want. If we get to that point, that'll help. So encourage that, and then fewer integrated subjects and loan nine. Did you get that part?
I'm just a former educator and administrator, so I just wanted you to expound on that.
Yeah, yeah. We've got. I think there's probably about 6 or 7 state cases where the door's been opened.
So you're using Christian education as an umbrella term.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not public, not schools that are not run by the NEA or the AFT. Because what we're seeing statistically is that schools that are predominantly NEA AFT controlled at the principal, vice principal, senior teacher level are the ones with the worst performance and the least Christian principled. And that's what happened. They're basically destroying our Christian principles. In 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks, we're going to have a guest lecture, i.e., a video, looking at are we a Christian nation? Because right now that's a hot topic. Are we a Christian nation? Should we even pretend to be a Christian nation? And he's going to talk about that. The Christian principles, not the religion, not the church you go to, but the Christian principles is what this country was founded upon.
So with that, you're saying encourage. Would you also say you would encourage those in the Lord's church to also offer Christian schools? Well, much like Freed-Hardeman does at the university level?
I mean, all right, so let me say if you understand. By offer Christian schools, you mean schools that our kids can go to and graduate from and go into college and stuff in the regular, have all why not? I mean, I can't think of any reason why not, except the money. I mean, you pretty much have to be well off to afford these schools. What does it cost to go to?
I thought if they took government money, they had to.
That's what I mean by the court cases. The first ones that tried to do with that, the court turned around and zapped them and forced them to do like what that Brazilian note is. You're in the government, you take a dime from us, you better do this. There's 4 or 5 or 6 court cases that have opened that door within the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. There are a lot of people now going towards homeschooling for this very reason.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of friends in other states who homeschool, and they are allotted. My friends in Arkansas the other day, they get $7,000 per child.
Really?
year. You can put that towards a co-op or private lessons or whatever you want.
Yeah.
But it gets hairy to me. Mississippi gives you nothing, right? Other states give you a computer every year. You get all whatever books you want to order.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you start taking the government's money, I just feel like you're just taking a step towards them, and they're going to take a step towards you until eventually they start putting, lines of you have to meet this requirement.
Exactly.
Your curriculum has to look like this.
I've been Title IX. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know how anybody follow these court cases, but if you ever have a chance to talk to your representative about this sort of thing, give them a plug. Give them a plug. If you got any kids that you know that are trying to decide between a public school and a Christian school, push the Christian school. Anyway, of the people I've personally known, they come out better folks, and their Christianity lasts long. One of the reasons why I am a Christian apologetics person, apologist, is because of a statistic that I've been aware of for a long time. That's scary. Of all the kids in the United States, this stat's probably 7 or 8 years old, so it may not be up to date, but of all the kids in the United States that were surveyed by the Pew study people, that graduated from high school as a Christian, what percentage of them do you think were unchristianized within the first year of college? 75%. 75%. And of the 75% was unchristianized, less than a third of them ever came back. Why? Why do you think they were unchristianized?
They were very strong Christians.
You're getting close. The church has always been very much inwardly focused and saying the world is bad, stay away from it. And church folks are really good about giving their kids reasons to be Christians using examples of family, friends, the Bible, read this stuff.
When people pull out the church and go to some of these happy churches, just because the kids want to,
Yeah.
That's the same. It's the very same principle.
Yeah. But even it affects them because church folks tend to do a real good job of getting their kids into Christianity for emotional reasons. All right? Heart. It's a heart thing. Christian apologetics focuses on getting people into church and staying there for head reasons. Okay? So when I sit down with folks, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the warm, fuzzy feeling I had the first time I thought about my Lord. What I'm going to talk about is the probability, the mathematical probability of God not existing and the causes of Him existing. And we're going to talk about facts and figures. So when I graduate a class in my Christian evidences, they have facts that they can sit in front of their biology teacher in college and say, but wait a minute, what about this? Life didn't come from the goo through the zoo to you because probabilistically, it's like 1 to the 300th power against it. And that's a large number. And those are the numbers they need to stay Christians. So anyway, I'm getting off on a soapbox here. But anyway. All right, questions. All right, first question. Should the federal government require that only a federal licensed teacher be permitted to teach or instruct a child in an educational setting? This is the interactive portion.
Can you define educational setting?
Well, for most, all right, that's a good question. Yeah, educational setting. 10 years ago, everybody was in public education. 20 years ago, you were the exception. You're still the exception, but you're a smaller exception. This is the public schools environment. Yeah. What's your thoughts?
Well, the federal government doesn't license teachers.
States usually do. Yeah, you're right. States usually do.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What about states? How does it feel if it's states? No, you're right. I should probably choose that question because they don't license federal states. Should only state licensed teachers teach? Personally, I don't think so. I don't think it's a good idea because at least what I'm seeing now is that under the state system, the states, the viewpoints, the goals, the outcomes of licensed teachers under the state system is beginning to look too much like the APP moving away from the WCP.
Well, I mean, what's the alternative though?
A minimum curriculum that she has to deal with. I would-
So that I know that you're concerned about worldviews
Yeah.
and what's being taught. On the other hand, states are legitimately concerned that there's a minimum level of education that should be taught.
Yeah, and that's good.
They need to be able to read at a certain reading level, whatever their worldview, and they need to be able to have math at a certain proficiency, whatever their worldview.
Reading, writing,
And they
arithmetic.
need to be trained in teaching those things.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That basically says I don't need a licensed teacher to teach, and the licensing be total. I want it to be a minimum. I
Okay.
want reading, writing, arithmetic, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, my kids' time on pottery making or learning how to be gender neutral or anyway,
But I think we would all agree that there's a standard that would have to be met.
a minimum standard. Yeah.
A minimum standard.
Yeah.
I think that's where that statement feels fuzzy. It's like, oh, I don't want Joe Blow the mechanic coming in and teaching my 5-year-old how to read, because
I don't want Joe Blow mechanic come in and teach my kid another thing or two. A lot of
if he
things.
wants to come in and teach shop, that would be great.
Yeah, right.
But maybe teaching them to read might not be, something that's it.
Yeah. What they're getting taught in some places is some of the books that are showing up in the kindergarten libraries are scary. But anyway, all right. So, other comments? Who's our teacher? Within the WCP, who's our teacher? It's a loaded question, but
My kids all went to private school or whatever.
there's some scripture. And Jesus went around all Galilee teaching in their synagogues. Scripture tells us who the teacher should be. Whoever therefore breaks one of these least commandments and teaches men so that they shall call the least in the kingdom of heaven, but whoever does and touches them, he does. All right, I'm getting tangled up here. The least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called the least of the kingdom, but whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called the great in the kingdom of heaven. Basically, what he's saying is these commandments. Key words up there are these commandments. Scripture. All right? And so it was when Jesus had ended these sayings, the people were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, not as the scribes. I feel fairly confident saying that just about every Christian mother and father I know, I mean, truly Christian mother and father they want their kids to know reading, writing, and arithmetic. But it would also be nice if they knew a little bit of Jesus. What would Jesus do? Any problem with that? And that's why I'm saying on that previous slide, we need fewer courses. We need a reduced, again, my opinion, we need a reduced number of topics covered. Still need reading, writing, arithmetic, and all that sort of stuff. But we need all of that is teaching done anchored to Lonang, anchored to our original document, the Declaration of Independence, the laws of nature, and nature's God.
I agree with that premise, but in the older grades, that needs to be expounded upon.
Okay.
Because they do need to know the trajectory of life they're going to be on.
Yeah.
So just merely sticking to 3 subjects is not going to put them on the trajectory for success.
But again, I'm treating it as a minimum. Yeah, when you get to was it junior, senior year, you start taking electives, all kinds of courses. Yeah. But I have a hard time accepting the fact that gender studies is a valid senior course or something. But that's just my opinion. But anyway, so do we agree or disagree? How about we disagree? All right. The federal government should fund school-based health clinics, which would include safe-sex counseling and may include abstinence. There's a mixed-up question, isn't it? Health clinics. Thought on that. Hmm?
Imbalance.
Imbalance? Yeah.
Should include.
What this question is trying to imply, I may have written it poorly, is that if a school teaches a health type curriculum course, anything, right now, they may or may not include safe sex counseling. That infers that there is non-first sex, not self, going on. Did I tangle myself up in that one? If safe sex counseling is included, that infers that some sex isn't safe and it's being included. We're talking about it. In other words, we're talking to kids about the first time you have sex at 12 years old, 14 years old, okay? And they are not teaching about abstinence. If you see any of these textbooks where they are openly talking about sexual activity prior to marriage, prior to graduation, okay, talking about which ones is safe sex, okay, particularly safe safe same sex, but they refuse to talk about abstinence. Wait until you're married. Does that clear up the question better yet? So, should the federal government fund that kind of stuff? It says here. You've heard that was said days of old, you shall not commit adultery. Any anti-adultery topics in these courses I'm talking about? It doesn't appear as though. Whoever therefore breaks the least of these commandments and teaches men, so shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. What I'm trying to say here is not only are they teaching in a way which I believe is inappropriate and subjects that are inappropriate, they're not allowing the conversation that would make it appropriate, like abstinence.
The whole problem is the lack of a moral compass.
No kidding.
When you talk about safe-sex counseling, you're really just talking about the physical safeness
Yeah.
of not getting pregnant or getting STIs.
Yeah.
But they're not going to consider anything else outside the physical, which we know God intended it to know another human on a much deeper level than physical. And because that's not discussed, you can't appreciate the gift that God made as sex.
And unfortunately, there's a number of these kids that are not getting that at home either. So they get this kind of stuff at school, and there's no countervailing position at home. I don't suspect that in here, but
I personally don't think it ought to be taught, period. I never had any kind of course like that when I went to school.
Trying to remember, we had a
Back in the dark ages.
okay, yeah, back to the. I think there was like a home economics class. Anybody here ever take a home ec? Okay.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah. Did you ever talk
we
about?
Get into that kind of thing.
Really?
No.
Okay.
Learn how to make up a bed.
Make a bed and bake a cake, huh? Okay.
So concerned if that were taken away, though, what would happen to abortion rates without still, if you still don't have a moral compass, if you just take away safe-sex counseling, then what's going to happen to STI rates? What's going to happen to children born with deformities?
Yeah.
What's going to happen to the abortion rate? It's a package deal, you know? Taking away one is going to, it sounds really good, but then I think about all the children that are going to be affected, the babies that are affected. You don't talk about condom usage or the other things that go along with safe-sex counseling.
And in that vein, because our moral compass is developed much earlier
Yeah, that's
than
true.
the age at which most people have sex now, right? And so that's the underpinning of first child development 101,
Yeah.
right? You have to start at the very base what you're
Yeah,
going to
okay.
have,
Exactly.
right? And so this is a deeply rooted sociological behavior problem than what can just be covered right here in one question,
So
right?
let me,
It's a very loaded question.
yeah, it's loaded.
Yeah.
Let me bounce it back to you. Can it be done with abstinence? Is that can be one of the subtopics?
And what we done with that. Can it be a
Can
topic?
safe sex counseling also include the topic of
Of course it
abstinence?
can.
And that's what's not showing up.
But states can only teach so much if they're getting federal funds. That's why I'm saying this is a very deeper subject
Yeah.
than what can just be, well, we can just barely touch the surface.
Yeah.
Right? Education is very, very deep.
Yeah.
Deeper than what people know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, when I wrote the test, my opinion was I disagree. But I can see I'm not universal. But that's why we have a discussion class, okay? And that's why Paideia, that's why worldviews vary from person to person. I mean, we don't all have the exact same worldview. All right? The federal government should be directly involved for all students in determining which students go to college and which students go into the workplace and what jobs they hold. How does that one grab you?
I think directly involved, therefore, is kind of loaded because if,
Yeah.
you know, a child can't pass an SAT or an ACT, they know they're not going to, therefore, be college material.
Which
Right.
means they can only make 150 grand a year doing electrical work
So, right.
instead of going to college, racking up $350,000, $1,000 worth of debt and learning gender studies and pottery making. I went back when I was in college, back in the dark ages, right? In the 60s and early 70s. Yeah, I had a lot of people in my room that I was a hall monitor on, dorm. That was their thing. They were, back then it was poli sci, political science, and I think some of them were going psychology majors. But they were just trying to get through at the minimum. Anyway,
I don't think that government determines. I think that the child, the parent, the community, the school is a determinant factor. I don't
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
the government is an all-encompassing determinant factor for student success.
All right, let me
There
ask you
has
this.
to be, that viability has to lie within that person.
Do you think? Yeah, I agree with you. It's not there yet. But I'm seeing right now, this is again my opinion, I'm seeing right now a trend towards a type of government in which in the past the government did say, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this, no questions asked.
That's communism.
Yes. And that's what I said.
And that's kind of
Things are starting to show up now.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, when you read determining which students, to me, that phrase right there says communism.
Yeah, it really does. It could, yeah. Other comments? I told you we were going to be getting into a little bit more conversational topics, and we are. All right. And this I pray, that your love may abound still more and more in knowledge and in all discernment. I put that up there for that word discernment. That you may approve the things that are excellent, that you may be sincere and without offense till the day of Christ. And down here we got, and he called his disciples to himself. So basically, we've got Jesus determining that these 12 guys are going to work for me. And above that, the fact that there is still a piece of discernment which is reserved to the individual. All right? Right? Yeah. Comments? I tell you, we're zipping right along today. All right? Values clarification courses or situational ethics should be taught to students in our educational system. Situational ethics based on situational truth. You think about situational truth and situational ethics.
I think that the moral breakdown of the home is why all this is getting taught in school, because there's so many people that just have one baby right after the other,
Mhm.
and nobody's teaching them anything. They're just there. And if you don't have somebody that's going to teach them at home, they got to learn stuff somewhere, and that would be one.
Yeah.
But
Like I said 2 classes ago, that's epistemology. That's how you learn that. Okay. What I'm driving towards is how is that that?
yeah, growing up, you need to have value system with your children, so they don't need all that stuff.
All right, but what this is asking is whether or not value clarification courses or situational ethics. Situational ethics, maybe a confusion there. Remember back when I opened this course, I talked about truth. Is there absolute truth? If someone says there is no absolute truth, what do you ask them? Is that absolutely true? We're talking about sentences that collapse on themselves. All right, internally fight with themselves. Situational values is based upon, or situational ethics is based upon situational truth statements, which means that if someone says, well, that's okay for you, but I feel this way about it, depends on this.
Read the Bible where it says that I'll spew you out of my mouth.
Exactly, that's where I'm headed. That's where I'm headed.
If they're going to have something like that, then put a Bible verse to go with it.
If the truth that you based your values on is a dependent upon the situation, is that biblical? And I can think of very, very few verses in the Bible that support that.
You get some pervert up there.
How many verses in the Bible can you think of that say, do this, well, except for this case over here, and do that? Well, unless this guy's doing that. Can you think of many? I can think of one.
Just want the ball coach down in Olive Branch.
Anybody? You should. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, James says that Rahab was considered righteous when she hid the spies
Yeah.
and sent the guys looking after them in a different direction. Basically, she lied about, oh, I never saw those guys. I think they went over there and sent them in a different direction.
That's a situation.
And James says she was considered righteous for that.
Yeah. That's and means just for you. What I'm thinking about.
But I could say the same thing about people in, say, Amsterdam who were hiding Jews from the Nazis in the late 30s and early 40s.
Right.
They would come to the door, and because they had scruples against lying, they'd say, "You have any Jews here?" They go, "Oh yeah, they're upstairs," and give them their death sentence.
Right. That's like the 10 people in a 9-person lifeboat question.
Can you expound on the values clarification courses and what's your ideas behind what is that different?
Yeah, okay. A value clarification. A value clarification courses are the courses like the new courses that push the progressive values, and they value the collective more so than the individual. So, anytime there is a valuation between an individual decision to be made versus the collective decision to be made, they actually propose in their training, in the educational system, in the textbooks, the collective. And that's one example. The other example I was thinking of, did Jesus say you can go out and divorce your wife? Just write her a letter and get out of her, get away from her. That's the only one I can think of that said you don't do this. Well, except if she's already got adultery in there. Okay. And that's the only one I think where he gave us an exception, a situational ethic decision to make. But if you look elsewhere in the Bible that talks about that, it almost leads you to believe, but he was just giving them an excuse because they were full of it right then and there. If they weren't so rotten themselves, he probably wouldn't have given that an excuse. But again, that's not a verse. I didn't pluck that verse out.
Yeah, Scott, looking at the timeline that you put in with the APP coming into existence,
Yeah.
I can see where a lot of my education, value in the educational system is, can't we all just get along? They were trying to incorporate peace and people having less conflict.
Right. That's called the Barney, Big Purple Barney argument. Boys and girls, can't we all get along? Yeah. All right. So, situation. I have another course. Well, one of the classes in another course that talks about situational truth, or situational truth. Basically, truths. Any truth statement that is governed by what I call the horizontal, the societies, your neighbors, your friends, anything that is situationally based upon that opinion level. All right, that's called opinions. That's not a value. That's an opinion. Anything that's based upon the standard of God, that we are all under the standard of God, then that is not a situational truth. Once you get past that little leap you have to make from the end of evidential belief all the way to absolute belief, is that leap of faith you take. At the end it says, okay, I can't see God, but I'm reading this book. He exists. I'm looking at these facts. He exists. Therefore, I'm going to give myself over to what that book says. I'm making that leap. I'm going to be the Christian. Okay. I'm not sure where I was going with that. Anyway, that belief system is vertical. That's belief system is to God. And that is the lack of a situational ethic. That is a clearly defined standard ethic. I'm learning a lot here. I wrote a terrible test. I really should go back and rewrite these questions or give it up.
I just want to say, well, I mean, it's okay. The values, when I look at that, I'm looking at it as a, values that we teach kids in school, right? Be kind.
Yeah.
Those things like that are still being taught in schools. I don't want everybody to
Oh, yeah,
think
no.
not happening. I still work in the school system.
Yeah.
Actually just completed writing a 6-week curriculum for a school that actually encompasses these very things that we've gotten away from.
Yeah, thank you.
To add back value,
Yeah.
Morals and judgment into our system,
Yeah.
right? How do I look at that from a Christian perspective? Is how I wrote it, and it's going to be used this school year. It was already approved, so if there are positive things that can happen, you just have to look for them, and hope that God utilizes good Christian people still in the school systems, that our Christian families still have to attend because they don't have a parent that can stay home and school.
Right.
They don't have a parent that can pay for
Yeah.
that education. And so I don't want everybody to lose heart
Yeah.
because it seems like we're very negative on education,
I am,
but there are some positives.
Yeah. I tend to, I honestly, I don't think very much about my audience. Tends to be sophomore, junior, seniors in high school and 4 years of college. That's what I'm a scientist, okay? If I start talking to an 8th grader about the probability of something, so that's my audience. And those are the folks I am looking at in the books they're reading. And those are the ones that scare me. I honestly don't look a whole lot at kids. I try to avoid my grandkids. They drive me nuts, okay? I'm certainly not going to read their textbooks.
All right, so I would like to clarify something.
Yeah, please do. There's a lot of clarification.
Like Jesus did a lot of values clarification in his teaching, right?
Yeah.
So the Pharisees were hard line about you don't break the Sabbath.
Yeah.
We don't break the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And then Jesus says, but wait a second. If an ox falls into a ditch,
you're going to go get him.
Out. I can't heal this person on the Sabbath.
Right.
This doesn't make sense. And so when Jesus heals a man born blind, they go, but it was on the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
He breaks the Sabbath, therefore he's a sinner.
Blasphemer.
That's it. Yeah. But Jesus is trying to explain the very next thing after this incident in John 9 is the blind man was healed. He sees now, but I came so that those who see would become blind. and they're blind to what the values of God really are. The whole reason why Rahab was justified by what she did
Hmm.
was because human life was saved.
Yes.
That's way more important. The reason why it's okay to heal and do good on the Sabbath is because human lives are valued instead of, and the Sabbath was not made for man.
In the image of God.
Man was,
Yeah.
the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.
Let me modify this question based on what you just said. The Jesus teaching values is not in our educational system now.
Okay.
Okay.
But, so Jesus does say there's weightier matters of the law, right?
Yeah.
So there are things that we need to value
Yeah.
higher than others.
All right, let me ask you this. I'm going to throw this challenge back at you. I fight with it, okay? One of the things that I see predominant in our culture is we will go out of our way to be the purple dinosaur, Barney, okay? We will not hurt other people's feelings. We will not hurt other people's feelings. I will go out of the way not to make you feel bad, dumb, stupid, whatever. People will go to extraordinary lengths to not hurt family and friends' feelings.
One
But
of our key concepts is diversity that we include in trying to get church to grow, correct?
I'm not sure I follow that.
Diversity.
Oh, yeah. Does it,
What about in matters of truth, where people are
here's what I'm
not
talking about. Thomas Sowell, everybody knows Thomas Sowell. He's a really highfalutin philosopher, a really smart guy. He wrote a lot of stuff. And what he said was, if you love someone, you tell them what they need to know. If you tell them what they want to know, you're loving yourself. You're trying to avoid that I'm hurting his feeling conflict. When you tell people what they need to know, you're loving them. I'm going to go a step further. I think that's approaching agape love. When you tell them what they need to know, even when you know it could hurt their feelings, but they need to know it. Like when you see someone who is getting ready to sacrifice his trip to heaven for something he wants to do now, shouldn't you step out and say, well, let's think about this a little bit, You tell them what they need to know. When you're trying to live to that standard, how do you play Barney? It's hard to play Barney. Or Mr. Rogers. Welcome to my neighborhood. I have a hard time doing. There are people that I love really close, but I still find myself periodically telling them what I think they want to hear, or what will ever shorten the conversation and let me leave quickly with a smile on my face, taking the shortcut out. And I know in my heart, I really should invest the time to say, let's talk about this. Let me ask you some questions. Let me play the old Columbo trick on you. Ask you questions. You else have trouble with that?
Like it had been spoken, the moral education should be expounded more at home. But if it's not there, then you vote for this way. I didn't do good on your test. I'll be honest, I failed it. But I mean, I feel like this is going to be strongly disagree. I don't know.
Right.
Let's see what-
But I would say too, when I was in different positions than I am now, I knew this was going on, and I taught my kids. John and I did, but we use it as a way for them to have a voice, right? So they knew wrong was being taught. Our children spoke up and said, "This is my thought too." on the
I like that.
subject."
I like
They
that.
were taught not to sit there and just take it. I didn't take it as an administrator, and on down the road when I was on down lower on the totem pole. If I knew something was being taught wrong and that opinion was allowed to be taught because our government said it could, then I was going to also give my input
In
on the
in
subject.
in most families, particularly Christian families, I find if they have problems with this, or excuse me, what they will follow is the Sowell statement about agape love with their kids. I mean, they're not going to tell their kids, I want to go out and play in traffic. I say, okay, you're having fun. If I say no, you'll be mad at me. Go play in traffic. No, when they want to go play in traffic, mom's going to stop them. Okay? But by the time they get to be, teenagers and you're up to here, it's tempted more to say they'll learn and let them out the door. And by the time you get to the point where you have friends that you have to work with in the office 5 days a week, 300 something days a year, and you know darn well that if you hack them off, they're going to back treat you. And so you end up not telling them what they need to know because you don't want to have to deal with the consequences. And when you're not wanting to deal with the consequences, who are you loving, them or you? You're loving yourself when you don't want to deal with consequences. Anyway, that blew a few minutes, but again, almost the whole course is my opinion. So please keep my opinion in there. I've tried to get biblical references for all my opinions, but I didn't fail, but I'm close. Okay. There's one section on here that I did fail, the science section. And hopefully there won't be enough time for us to cover it. All right. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Be diligent, present yourself approved to God, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word. Looking for key ones. What to those who call evil good and good evil. I've seen people literally agree with someone else that is an evil thought, but you just didn't want to hurt their feelings. Unfortunately, I've seen that within a marriage, but that's so anyway, what was my opinion? Yeah, strongly disagree. Now you know why I'm not asking for your scores on the test. I don't want to know anybody's score. All right. Science, history, literature, and other advanced educational skills and facts can be taught without religious reference. I'm running short on time, so let me go ahead and do this. I want to do this. Is it possible for me to teach science, history, literature, any other advanced educational skill without religious conviction? Maybe some of you have already seen this, One Solitary Life. If you haven't, let me read it to you. Here is a man who was born in an obscure village, the child of a peasant woman, grew up in another village, worked as a carpenter shop until he was 30. Then for 3 years, he was an itinerant preacher. He never owned a home. He never wrote a book. He never held an office. He never had a family. He never went to college. He never put his foot inside a really big city. He never traveled 200 miles from the place he was born. He never did any one of these things that usually accompany greatness. He had no credentials but himself. While still a young man, the tide of a popular opinion turned against him. His friends ran away. One of them denied him. He was turned over to his enemies. He went through the mockery of a trial, nailed to a cross between two thieves, and while he was dying, his executioners gambled for the only piece of property he had on earth, his coat. And when he was dead, he was laid in a borrowed grave through the pity of a friend. 19 long centuries have come and gone, and today he is the centerpiece of the human race and the leader of the column of progress. I am far within the mark when I say that all the armies that have ever marched, all the navies that were ever built, all the parliaments that ever sat, and all the kings that ever reigned, put together, have not affected the life of man upon this earth as powerfully as that one solitary life. What can you teach without mentioning, or at least referring to, Jesus? How do you do it?
Computer program.
I've seen programmers pray for the next download.
But that you don't teach programming by referencing.
Well, that's true. I got to think on that one. I don't have a snappy retort for that one.
I mean,
Is there logic and order in computer programming?
Oh, absolutely.
So who is the author of order?
Thank
but
you.
you don't teach that.
All right. Yes, you
don't
do.
teach it.
All right.
You don't teach. You can have a logic course, and that's separate from a computer program.
Can you learn something from experience without a teacher?
Yes.
Then you can learn, you can be taught from a non-human interactive teaching. Let me follow up on her comment. Science. Can you do science without God? Right now in society, they'll tell you you don't need God. You got science, you don't need God. Doesn't answer a question, You just give me some more funding from the government. My projects run a bit longer. We'll find out eventually. You don't need God. That's what the culture, that's what most of the culture says today. Can you do science without God? Can a scientist run any kind of a program or any kind of anything logical without his laws? I mean, there are laws which are absolutely basic to the entity himself, God, characteristics of God, things that he just can't decide to do or not to do, things that are absolutely part of his very nature, like God is love. It's not God practices love, enjoys love, can love, doesn't love. God is love. God is just. He shows justice. Again, not just practicing, but he is part of his very nature. And simply because he's infinitely loving and infinitely just, that's why we needed Jesus.
And there's people right here in this country don't even believe.
I know. That's why we need Jesus.
But they're
Part of
not
that also,
before they worry about any of this. I mean,
part of that entity called God with these qualifications, there's lots of laws. There's laws of logic. Aristotelian laws of logic. The three identities. That what is, that what is not, excluded middles, and non-contradictional statements. Those three right there are built into computer programming all over the place.
I'm not denying any
Oh,
of that. That's just, you don't have to believe that God set that up in order to program a computer.
that's true. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So science tells us the what. Science can't tell us the why. So and that's what science is descriptive, right? It can't give us the tell us. It can't give us a reason for stuff. Only God can do that. So the question that you got up there is, can this stuff be taught? As a matter of fact, it is every day.
Yeah.
Every day. You can teach Shakespeare. Now Shakespeare references God all the time, right?
Yeah.
But you can still reference Shakespeare. You can still teach Shakespeare, and you can talk about his references to God or whatever, or to the ghost of Hamlet or whatever you want, right? Without necessarily believing in Shakespeare's worldview.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is, again, another bad question. I should have changed that can to should.
Because let's say you try to teach Julius Caesar. You try to teach Julius Caesar,
Yeah.
and it's the whole premise is doing the right thing. Well, what is the right thing when there's not a moral compass? Is it okay to murder somebody when it's the right thing for the common good? So I think, yeah, you can teach these things, but you're missing the heart of every subject. If I can teach to kill a mockingbird, but I don't teach loving other people and where that comes
Yeah.
from and caring about other people and sacrifice and integrity, and why does anybody care about that if there's no moral compass? Why have integrity? That cost Atticus, you know.
I thought I had printed out the sheet.
well,
I didn't print that one.
right about
Was-
teachers. It's not teachers, it's the family that's raising these kids.
We should be grateful for
Exactly.
Christian teachers
Exactly.
like you who are on the mission field, because it is a mission field.
I thought I had printed out, but I didn't. It was a list of all the things in literature. I mean, like famous literature, okay, that referenced Jesus or Christ or any of the religious stuff. And I'm having a brain dump again. One of the most famous writers of the 1500s, anyway, in his writings, it was like 2,000 references to God and Jesus. There are, I think in common English today, there's over 100 phrases that we use that come right out of the King James Bible, literally right out of the King James Bible, word for word. So I mean, it's like it's in everything. And in science, can you do any science without a knowledge of, or at least an understanding about works of cause and effect? Cause and effect is one of the primary principles, part of God. For every cause there is an effect, and for every effect there is a cause. And you can't do science without that. Literally.
Well, until you get down to quantum physics.
I knew you were going to say that. I think you're going to say that. The thing called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, right? Werner Heisenberg. Yeah, when you get down to, you can't define quark behavior at that level. Anyway, you did do it. I knew it was coming. All right. So I should be taught without religious preference. Science needs God's logic and principles. Oh, here it is, right here. Literature. Shakespeare referenced 42 books in the Bible, 2,000 references in his plays. Our language has, I was wrong, 247 idioms straight out of the King James Bible, such as a leopard can change his spots, salt of the earth, thorn of the flesh, skin of our teeth, etc. Our whole culture is full of religious reference. But yes, we can teach it without telling them when I'm teaching it, oh, by the way, this comes out of the Bible. So I think that's my last one. It is. It's my last one. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, next week we'll do rules and laws. All right, thank you. Oh.